Hey everyone. Okay, video two here of the additional study designs. And so we talked about quasi experimental designs in video one at the end of it, uh, slide three. And yeah, just last thing on that, you want to make sure that you understand quasi independent versus truly independent variables. Independent variables in the truest form are ones where you can randomly assign people to one condition or another. Quasi-independent variables you can't, like male or female, or freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. You can't randomly assign people to those. You just have to take people in those conditions as they are. Yeah, that's the main thing I wanted to discuss there. So, okay, I'm going on to slide four with one group post-test design. Uh, this is exactly what it sounds like. In this situation here, you administer a treatment to a group and then you measure them right away. That's pretty much all there is to it. You really do this when the treatment is something that you wouldn't expect, like some kind of event occurs, maybe a flood, which I don't know, aren't we living through some kind of weird effect that right at this moment that we couldn't have anticipated? What were your attitudes about personal hygiene prior to the COVID 19 outbreak? What are they now? So that would be a perfect example of a one group post test design. So this is something that you get good information about your dependent variable attitude towards hygiene in this case. But the problem is that since there's only one group and you haven't even done a pretest with them, you don't know what type of change has occurred, if any, um, since experiencing the event. You don't know what their attitudes were before. So maybe people were really good on their personal hygiene before all this happened, and they have the same perspective on it now. So it may not be that this event, this self quarantining and everything we're doing, and COVID 19 has brought about all this change in cleanliness. Maybe people have already been that way, and we just didn't have pretest information. And we certainly don't have a control group either. So these one group post test designs are okay to be kind of adaptive to something that occurs uh, with maybe little warning or maybe in more of an applied setting. But the causation element is limited because you don't have a pretest and you don't have a control group to compare these folks against. So the ex post facto design is slide five here. What that does is it takes care of that. So it'll compare that group that has received some treatment, no pretest still, but that has received a treatment against some group that we're going to call a non-equivalent control. They haven't experienced that. We're just going to go find them elsewhere because they're similar to these folks, and then we're going to assess them. So maybe what we would do is find some place on the world map that hasn't been impacted by COVID 19, which ironically enough, I think my wife was looking at one of these mapping things, and the continent of Africa has a lot of a lot of space where it hasn't really shown up. So there are some places in the world where COVID 19 isn't breaking out, so you could try to find a group of people that's not impacted by this at all, and then assess their attitudes on cleanliness and see at least if you can compare the post tests of the group that received the intervention or treatment or special circumstance that was unforeseen versus a group that didn't. So at least now you have a control group of some type, but you still don't have any pretest, which means we suspect the treatment produced change, but we don't know for sure. So, as we've talked about before, pretests give us the ability to establish causation. And still, with the ex post facto designs, we don't have pretests, so we're not quite there in terms of firm causation we can establish. The one group pretest post test design on slide six is one where we have a group, a single group that receives a treatment, but we do have a pretest. The problem is we still don't have a control group, so we can't make causal inferences. There's a bunch of different reasons why there could be change in that one group from pre to post, and I've listed them there.